PT Tribakti Inspektama, a leading survey company, was established in 1989. We expand our services to the coal and mineral mining sector to provide inspection, certification, PT Tribakti Inspektama, a leading survey company, was established in 1989. We expand our services to the coal and mineral mining sector to provide inspection, certification, and laboratory analysis services. Being one of the most experienced surveying companies in Indonesia, we can be your partner to minimize risk by providing accurate, reliable, independent, and timely results for the scope of work that we provide for you with our depth of expertise and knowledge in every aspect of our business process.
Tantangan akan sebuah ketangguhan kini telah hadir di Indonesia. Sebagai kendaraan yang telah dipercaya di berbagai negara di
we can be your partner to minimize risk by providing accurate, PT Tribakti Inspektama, a leading survey company, was established in 1989. We expand our services to the coal and mineral mining sector to provide inspection, certification, and laboratory analysis services. Being one of the most experienced surveying companies in Indonesia, we can be your partner to minimize risk by providing accurate, reliable, independent, and timely results for the scope of work that we provide for you with our depth of expertise and knowledge in every aspect of our business process.
Tantangan akan sebuah ketangguhan kini telah hadir di Indonesia. Sebagai kendaraan yang telah dipercaya di berbagai negara di dunia, Scorpio Pickup memiliki ketangguhan dan performa yang maksimal. Dengan dukungan biaya servis yang ringan, serta garansi 3 tahun, Scorpio Pickup siap menghadapi segala medan. Untuk test drive, hubungi kami sekarang juga. Mahindra, challenge the toughness.
Halo, welcome Pak Cipe, Pak Hendra, Pak Agustinus.
Halo Pak, can you hear me? Can you hear me Pak?
Yes Pak, yes.
Oke, terima kasih, terima kasih.
Halo Pak Agustinus. Suaranya nggak ada Pak? Tes Pak.
Halo Bang Adi.
Sudah.
Bagus ya? Jernih ya?
Ya, jernih suaranya.
Oke, sip. Selamat siang Bang Adi.
Selamat siang Pak.
Pak Gue ya? Pak G ya? Hai Pak.
Cipe.
JP. Hai. Dan siapa lagi ini? Pak Hendra, selamat siang Pak Hendra.
Hai Pak Agustinus Tamrin, selamat siang. Apa kabar Pak?
Baik Pak Hendra, good to see you again.
Waduh, Pak Dianto, selamat siang. Oh, Mr. JV. You in Hong Kong, right? Okay. Good to see you again, Mr. JV. Oh, Pak Dianto, Pak dari Aifa, selain Mr. JV, siapa lagi?
Ada
Tufu ya?
Tufu
Oh,
dan Sam Reynolds.
oh, jadi 3 orang ya?
Ya, Reynolds.
3 orang ya Pak?
Because Sam is too late at night, so I'll be presenting for him.
Oh,
Oke.
Okay, no problem, no problem.
Oh, oke. Kalau Pak Beni Suryadi?
Beni Suryadi dari ASEAN,
Dari ASEAN,
kantor ASEAN, ya,
Center for Energy ya?
kantor ASEAN berarti ya?
Bukan, ada kantor itu kok apa? Center for Energy ya?
Center for Energy.
ASEAN Center for Energy ya.
Oh, itu bukannya part of ASEAN, kantor ASEAN ya Pak?
Bukan, di sekretariat ASEAN bukan. Ya. Tapi ya badan di bawah ASEAN lah. Tapi bukan di kantor sekretariat ASEAN. Kantornya di Kuningan di situ kok, di itu satu gedung dengan itu Dirjen Gatrik Kelistrikan. Okay, I'll be right back.
Hi, Pak Lars.
How are you?
I'm fine, Pak.
Hello. Hello, Pak
Jitendra,
Lars.
how are you?
I'm
Good to
doing
see you.
fine, thank you. Good to see you again. Are you in Singapore
All right.
or?
I'm in Switzerland.
Oh,
Switzerland.
Switzerland. I see. Yeah. What time is it now? It's in the morning, yeah?
8 o'clock, yes.
8 o'clock in the morning. I see.
No problem. Yeah. Good, good, good.
Switzerland.
Fine, thank you. Good to see you again. Are you in Singapore or?
I'm in Switzerland.
Oh, I see. What time is it now? It's in the morning, yeah?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock in the morning.
Hold on, there's some delay. I can hear my conversation.
Yeah, there is some delay here. Yeah?
Henda, you could hear me right away, right? But then you also hear the conversation, right? Afterwards.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can hear the
Very strange.
conversation.
Okay. Just 1 second, I'll be back shortly.
All right. Ada delay kayaknya Pak Adianto ya di ini sama Lars tadi.
Saya hidupin itu tadi, saya hidupin YouTube. Sekarang sudah normal, Pak.
Oh iya ya, sekarang sih oke ya.
Sudah normal. Mungkin karena terdengar tadi suara YouTube, saya hidupkan YouTube. YouTube kan delay.
Oh, oke. Oh, jadi ketangkap di sini ya.
Jadi ketangkap.
Ya.
Ini.
Hello, good afternoon.
Halo.
Good afternoon, Miss Tufu.
Yes.
Hi, Tufu. Yeah. Good to see you again.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me. So we are on YouTube as well.
Yes, we have YouTube. So if you wanna search with your team or your friends, we are welcome.
All right.
So
should we check if I can share my screen?
Okay, please.
Yep. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. Yep.
Good.
Sure. Right. I will stop sharing now then. Hi, Guy.
Hey, too, why don't you present on Philippines as well, so I can take the afternoon off.
Yes.
All right. Yep. Sure.
Okay, I have to monitor the YouTube as well.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Hendra, can you hear me?
Yes, it's clear. Yeah, I can hear you clearly, Lars.
Excellent. The sharing function is okay. I can share my presentation, yeah?
Halo, Pak Adianto.
Yes, Pak. Yes, Pak Lars.
Should I try or?
Just try, Pak.
I have to. Okay. I have to log in back in. Hold on. Okay, can you see?
Okay. Yes, Pak. It works. Pak Lars. Halo Pak Lars.
Yes.
Pak, can you still Pak stop sharing Pak since we have a previous introduction? Yes Pak. Thank you Pak Lars. So we are still waiting for Pak Beni Suryadi. Or Pak Beni already here? Halo Pak Beni. Let me check. Oh yeah, already. Welcome Pak Beni.
Ya, halo Pak. Selamat siang.
Selamat siang Pak.
Everyone. Ya.
Selamat siang Pak Beni.
Selamat siang
Salam
Pak
kenal.
Salam kenal
Ya.
Pak.
Siang Pak Beni.
Selamat siang Pak. Pak di sini selamat siang Pak. Salam kenal juga Pak.
Salam kenal Pak.
Ya.
Pak Riko, it's now at 2 p.m. Jakarta time. I think we can start while waiting for other participants since we have 300 registered participants, but still less than 100 already joined here. But we can start now. Pak Riko.
Tribakti Inspektama, a leading survey company, was established in 1989. We expand our services to the coal and mineral mining sector, certification and laboratory analysis services. Being one of the most experienced surveying companies in Indonesia, we can be your partner to minimize risk by providing accurate, reliable, independent, and timely results for the scope of work that we provide for you with our depth of expertise and knowledge in every aspect of our business process.
Tantangan akan sebuah ketangguhan kini telah hadir di Indonesia. Sebagai kendaraan yang telah dipercaya di berbagai negara di dunia, Scorpio Pickup memiliki ketangguhan dan performa yang maksimal. Dengan dukungan biaya servis yang ringan, serta garansi 3 tahun, Scorpio Pickup siap menghadapi segala medan. Untuk test drive, hubungi kami sekarang juga. Mahindra, challenge the toughness.
Pak Dianto still mute, Pak.
Yes, he's still mute. We cannot hear him.
Oh yeah, sorry. A very good afternoon. Welcome to webinar of ASEAN Coal Market Outlook and Supply Trend, which is hosted by Coal Asia Magazine and Petrominda.com. The webinar will focus on the discussion on outlook of ASEAN coal market this year and how Indonesian miners could adapt or taking other opportunities to the ASEAN coal market. This is the 4th of webinar series on coal market outlook. Coal Asia plan to have 6 webinars. This is a part of Coal Asia efforts to get or to stay updates on global coal market and giving insight also to miners, traders, and stakeholders in coal mining to understand this year's potential of global coal market. So we are happy to have honorable speakers coming from across the countries. Please welcome the first speakers. Yes, Dr. Lars Sernikau from HMS Bergabau. Pak Lars, thank you Pak. Terima kasih sudah bergabung Pak.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning to Europe. Hope everybody's well. Should I share my screen or?
Not yet, Pak.
Not yet.
Pak okay. Lars speak from Switzerland. So what time is it now, Pak, in Switzerland?
Just after 8 o'clock.
Okay, Pak. Thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for being with us today. The second speaker is Ms. Tufu. She is Energy Finance Analyst of Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. She is speaking from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. That's right?
Nope, I'm speaking from Hanoi.
Oh, Hanoi, yes, Vietnam.
It's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tufu. This is the second time to join the webinars hosted by Coal Asia. And also from Vietnam, we're still waiting for Mr. Tao. Hello, Pa. Let me check.
Yes, I'm here.
Already here. Thank you, Pa.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pa. He's from Group Executive Chairman of First Indochina Group. Welcome, Pak. Thank you for joining, Pak.
Thank you, Pak.
And the next speaker is Mr. Sam Reynolds. I think he will join us with us later. He's also from Energy Finance Analyst of Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. He's based in Philippines. And then Pak Sam with Mr. Jipe. The next, Mr. Jipe. Yeah, the Energy Finance Analysis at the Institute for Energy Economic and Financial Analysis will discuss with the Philippines coal market outlook. That's correct, Pak Ji? Hello, Pak.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Thank you.
Your voice is not so clear, Pak.
Oh, can you hear me now? Thank you. Thank you, Pak Adianto. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak. Okay, Pak. And the next speakers, we have Pak Agustinus Tamrin, who will speak on ASEAN market from perspective of coal miners. Pak Agus is one of the senior coal miners in Indonesia. Thank you, Pak Agustinus.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Pak Adianto. Yes, hi everybody. I hope you're all well and in good health. My name is Agustinus. I'm one of the miner practitioner. There is a change of directorship in the company, so I would be pleased today to speak today as a miner practitioner in Sumatra. Is it okay, Pak Adiani?
Noted, Pak.
Okay.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you for joining, Pak. Our next speaker is Mr. Beni Suryadi. Beni Suryadi is manager of power, fossil fuels, alternative energy and storage at the ASEAN Center for Energy. Thank you for your time, Pak Beni. Welcome, Pak.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Adianto. Selamat siang, everyone from Jakarta. Thanks for having me to join in this important discussion.
Terima kasih banyak, Pak. Terima kasih. And we are proud to have Pak Hendra Sinadia, Executive Director of Indonesian Coal Mining Association, as a moderator for the webinar. Thank you, Pak Hendra. We are lucky since Pak Hendra has a very good update on coal issues in domestic market and also overseas or global market. So thank you again for your time, Pak Hendra.
Thank you for having me, Pak Adianto.
Before we get started, we would like to, on behalf of the organizer, we would like to thank our sponsor for your support to the webinar. Thank you and sincere appreciation to Tribakti Laboratory and Integrated Services, PT Geoservices, Reswara Group, Mahindra Rice, and PT Indo Tambang Raya Mega. Terima kasih untuk dukungannya, terima kasih untuk sponsornya. Thank you for your support. We also like to thank you to all participants. Terima kasih sudah bergabung di webinar kita hari ini. If you have a question, please write on Q&A tools on your Zoom, and we will discuss it during the question and answer session. Or you can raise your hand if you want to deliver the question directly to the speakers or panelists. So without further ado, I would like to turn to the time over Pak Hendra Sinadia as a moderator. Please, Pak Hendra, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all the panelists, honorable speakers for joining us today. Coal Asia Petromindo Export Series webinar. I think it's the 4th series of the interesting topics of the webinars, and also very good afternoon to all the participants in this Friday cloudy or hari hujan, rainy day in Jakarta and surrounding area in Friday. Okay, today we're gonna discuss a very interesting topic, especially for Indonesians coal industry, where we discuss the potential market in the Southeast Asia regions which comprises of about 10 members country under the umbrella of ASEAN. ASEAN is a very important market indeed for Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest economy in the region, and if they look at the data, yeah, ASEAN, if we can combine all the ASEAN Southeast Asian countries as a one single market, whereas ASEAN is already established as a one single market. Indonesian export to ASEAN Southeast Asia regions is around more than 90 million in 2019, or about roughly 21% of the total Indonesian coal export. If we rank ASEAN as a single market, ASEAN is in the third largest Indonesian export destinations after China and India. And we expect, of course, ASEAN will grow. Yeah, the potential demand for coal will be grow. As we heard from the IEA, International Energy Assessment, they projected that ASEAN, Southeast Asia region, is the most dynamic coal-fired power plant development in the world. So we expect ASEAN, Southeast Asian country, will be Indonesian future potential export. And we heard already Vietnam is one of the most promising future market for Indonesian, and also other country also growing their coal usage very fast, including Malaysia and also in Philippines. Okay, today we are going to discuss several topics. We expect to listen from the all honorable presenters on the current status of the Southeast Asian market, and also the future potential demand in the region. And we are going to discuss a factor that the shaping coal consumption in the region, and also having presenter from IEEFVA. Of course, we keen to listen how the rise of renewable energy in the Southeast Asia will affect the coal demand in the future in the region. And also we expect to listen the perspective on the clean coal technology in Southeast Asia. As I mentioned earlier, that ASEAN is one of the most dynamic region in the coal-fired power plant development. So I believe the clean coal technology will be very important issue here. And lastly, we are going to listen the perspective from the miners, yeah, from Indonesian miners, of course, in cater or to fulfill the potential increased demand on the region. So according to the committee, we have keynote speakers will be delivered by Dr. Lars. The allocation time is for keynote speaker is 20 minutes, and then the other speakers will be 10 minutes each, and then followed by the question and answers. So I encourage, feel free to all the speakers to respond it directly if you have you want to respond directly to the Q&A in the chat room. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the first the speaker who delivered the keynote speaker on the today webinar. We delighted to have our good friend, Dr. Lars Chernikau. Yeah, he's shareholders of the MLS Bergbau, one of publicly listed company in international coal community and marketing and mining companies. And he's joining us from Switzerland now. It's 8 a.m., more than 8 a.m. in Switzerland now. So a little bit introduction of Dr. Lars. Yeah, Dr. Lars is a quite well-known figure in Indonesia. He studied at the NYU, New York University, and also attended INSEAD and received his doctoral degree in economics on the coal business from a university in Berlin. And also Dr. Lars is a very productive writer indeed. He already published 2 very interesting books. Yeah, I'm not mistaken. The first one is the Renaissance of Steam Coal. Yeah, and the second book that I read from the Coal Asia magazine, the excerpts, is the Why Coal will continue to power the world. It's a book published in 2016. So without further ado, I'd like to give the space, the time to Dr. Lars Chernikau. Dr. Lars, please, your time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Hendra. Good afternoon to Asia, to Jakarta. Thank you for the invitation. Hello, Adianto, and hello, everyone. You can hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we'll try to introduce a couple of subjects on the Asian or Southeast Asian market. I think all of the speakers here have excellent knowledge, and I'll try to introduce a few subjects that we then probably can go into deeper on the later stage in this discussion. Let me first start with the recent Economist cover page saying making coal history, right? The Western world has a very strong urge to stop coal in the world, and it's become extremely political, and it's become very unrealistic. And the reason why we'll talk here, but we're talking about Southeast Asia, one of the fastest growing markets and an important market, and I'll explain why Southeast Asia has no choice but to continue working with coal in a sensible way. The industry faces various crises. We have competition from gas and nuclear worldwide, you're aware. There is significant divestment and a growing share of renewables that the coal industry is struggling with. Of course, there's geopolitical changes, the Australia, US versus China, general polarization in the industry happening right now, which also makes our job in this coal industry quite challenging. And then there's long-term demand and supply issues. Export tightness. Indonesia, we had issues in the past. There's weather issues. Colombia, significant downturn in supply. What all these will impact our markets, including, of course, environment, right? We have clean coal, clean steel discussions, carbon capture and storage, pollution, and of course, the elephant in the room, catastrophic climate change and the Western, what I call political war against coal. We'll not discuss all these subjects today, but I will start with one of my favorite graphs. It's just the past of where the energy is coming from in the past 150 years. And you can see that last year, or let's say 12 months ago, 3% came from wind and solar, and 84% came from fossil fuels. And that is just what we continue to have to realize. And that is why I started with saying that the world has no choice but to continue working with coal, not against coal. Of course, coal itself has a share of over 1/3 in global electricity and over 1/4 of primary energy. Interesting enough is that this will grow in the next 30 to 50 years substantially. And as this will grow, and when you project this time, how in the world can we live without fossil fuels? That doesn't mean we don't have issues, but we have to find ways to make people realize that we have to work with coal, oil, and gas, not against them. Okay, high-level summary. On the left side, we have about 8 billion tons of coal being produced worldwide, of which about 1 billion tons of steam coal are traded. And last year, the market probably fell by about 100 million tons. That's about 10% because of COVID-19. It's a significant figure, more than other commodities, but less than other commodities as well. The seaborne volumes, however, in the last 15 years have doubled. So the question is, what will happen in the future, and what will Southeast Asia's role be in this? I started to put, a little bit of demand supply from last year together, and you see that Indonesia still makes up over 40% of global supply, with Australia about 20%. This is just steam coal. Russia is becoming more and more important, reaching also almost 20%. On the demand side, in terms of growth, last year, all of these markets dropped significantly. Indonesia had the biggest drop, was also the biggest market. But Indonesia, Australia had significant drops in supply last year. Russia managed to stay stable or even slightly grow. Now, on the demand side, the Asian market, including Southeast Asia, without India, was almost 650 million tons. India, another 150 million tons. That's together 800 million tons, or probably over 80% of the market, right? All of these markets fell last year because of COVID. Europe, probably the single biggest drop percentage-wise. I mean, you can see it probably fell 25, 30% last year in terms of imports. Europe, you may remember 10 years ago, was actually the main importing region, and that has changed dramatically. In Asia itself, similar picture, a little bit more, basically zoom in, and you have China, India, and here you have the Southeast Asian market, Japan, Korea, Taiwan. Those are basically the 6 main importing regions and the 6 main markets for Indonesia. And you can see, as Adianto was saying, and also Hendra was saying, Southeast Asia is now becoming as big as India. in itself. Of course, it's very fragmented market, it's not just one country, but Southeast Asia is important, and it's now over 15% of global market. Southeast Asia grew last year. China also grew in the end, interestingly enough, but we know why. India fell substantially, and some of the East Asian markets fell substantially as well. But again, Southeast Asia is now over 15% of the global market and almost as big as India, and has become bigger than Japan. Japan used to be one of the single biggest importing market before China grew. Hendra mentioned the IEA, and the IEA had an interesting publication in December 2020, which I think we've talked about quite a lot in this presentation, or in these seminar series. And you can see here the past 3 years, coal, how it has been developed. And you saw 19 and 20, you saw a drop in coal in terms of global power consumption from coal. And you see the IEA's predictions that 2020, coal will grow faster than gas, and probably faster than, or as fast as it was in 2018. So we will see a significant rebound this year in general power generation, as well as in coal specifically. So that's good news for the industry. It's also good news for Indonesia. In terms of the actual trade, also from the IEA, 2020, we had a significant drop of 10%, which we discussed before, and that will rebound and have a slight growth next year, which actually will be stronger in the met coal sector, where the growth will probably start to go back to almost 7-8% after a more than 10% drop in 2020. These again are all IEA numbers, which generally I support. They seem to be realistic. The changes in the imports, this is now from 2020 to 21. You can see that the other Asia, which includes Southeast Asia and India, will grow, while a few markets are expected to continue dropping slightly. But the fact is, next year or this year should be healthier than last year, and is subject to nothing crazy happening again. But you can also see the significant drop that happened in the past year. Now, everything depends on these coal-fired power plant capacity additions coming up. And we've heard in the press a lot of projects being stopped or reduced because of lack of funding or because of environmental issues. And it can be seen that, yes, these numbers have reduced, but they are still substantially increasing. And most important is that the key markets are Indonesia and Vietnam, continue to be where we expect the largest growth in coal-fired power plant capacity. Now, from a year ago, I found this slide from Wood Mackenzie, and that also then predicted Asian coal power plant capacity growth, which was very large, or is still expected to be very large in 2025, and then go down until 2030. These numbers probably have to be revised slightly down after last year's, some of the last year's publications, but I expect that growth will continue, and this is the import-dependent coal power plant capacity growth, which will continue in the various markets and primarily in Southeast Asia. Now, 2021 starts with large market distortions, and these distortions are interesting. You can see here how coal, in terms of bulk trade from the sea perspective, from the vessel perspective, has grown and then dropped, this 10% drop in 2020. Iron ore grew, grains grew, and then the smaller ones is not that important. But that has, of course, caused a significant distortion also in the freight market. And that freight market has really driven a lot of the demand and supply balances in the world. You can see that the 2021 started with extremely high freight rates. This is just Supramax rates compared to previous years. And this is again an opportunity for Indonesia, because coal from further far away is penalized more than Indonesia is. But these distortions continue to play an important role. Now, for instance, Indonesian market price went up substantially. South African price leveled off a little bit. So now India is buying South Africa if they can. So the pendulum swings very quick away from Indonesia into other markets or back to Indonesia when other markets become expensive. And that is something to keep in mind. And we just recently concluded several cargoes into the Southeast Asian and Indian market from South Africa, because today South African coal is significantly cheaper than Indonesian coal. This is just this price increase that we've seen in the HBA. I mean, you're all aware of this. I mean, the prices have literally doubled. Now, Vietnam. This is an old one from almost 2 years ago, which predicted a growth of over 80 gigawatts at that time, and also predicted how the import volumes will grow in Vietnam. And what I found interesting was that 2020, they predicted that Vietnam will import 40 million tons. In fact, they imported 45 million tons last year. So the predictions made came true so far. How we will see in the next years, you know, we can all make our own predictions, but I would assume that these numbers are not that far from the truth. So Vietnam is going to be one of the key markets. It's also a difficult market, not an easy market, but we have many Vietnamese colleagues here that will probably tell us more a little bit later. Steel production last year, just to give you a sense, I mean, it's amazing how Vietnam has gone through this crisis. And the GDP grew at 3%, and the trade surplus was over $20 billion, and the forecast is 6.5 to 7% for 2021, probably amongst the highest in the world. Thailand, very constant imports, not much to say here, you know, probably at what, 30 million tons or something. Not, no, Indonesia plays a key role. You see the orange numbers. Malaysia, I don't have the breakdown here, but of course, Indonesia is very, very important, has grown in the past years. It's now at almost 35 million tons, if I'm not mistaken, and Indonesia's share is very, very large. Bangladesh, not the ASEAN, but still an important market in the Southeast Asian region, I would say, will probably level off this year or this season. They will expect it to grow, but the imports will probably come off. But just to give you a sense, Indonesia's share here is also relatively high. Indonesia itself, being a Southeast Asian country, an ASEAN country, is very, very important. And these are numbers from the ICMA. I mean, Hendra here very well aware of this. But there is this COVID drop, right? This COVID drop is substantially and substantial, and that will take off every year 15, 20 million tons of domestic demand. So there is this adjustment locally. Everybody was expecting Indonesia to grow substantially. There's this drop here in 2021, in 2020, even 2021, we're back to numbers from 2-3 years ago. So there is additional supply capacity that is now not being taken up domestically, that has to find a home in the market, which of course we need you to be aware of and watch out for. Now, in terms of the future, we started with, you know, how coal will, you know, the killing coal and all those things. The Energy Institute of Japan, just beginning of last year, issued this, and they predict that global coal production will remain relatively stable, even still slightly grow for a few years. And I support that, just driven by demand. And we're talking now a little bit more macroeconomically. The changes in global coal consumption, even the IEA, who tends to be very conservative and very negative on coal, predicts that in the next 5 years, globally, we're more or less going to stay stable. And of course, US, Europe goes down and Asia goes up substantially. So a significant opportunity for Indonesia again. Why? Very simple, because the power consumption per capita in those countries, in the Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, is just far below the world average. And the power needs to come from somewhere. And it happens to be that actually gas is more expensive, and even for the climate, gas is no benefit compared to coal if you do talk about climate change and all those things. Now, what I also found interesting, just to put in perspective, the GDP drop to 2050 grows to 10% because of COVID. That is a recent study from October from the Energy Institute in Japan. So we will have a long-term slow reduction of growth because of this COVID crisis that will stay with us for many, many years. And that growth decline is quite substantial. And that makes you realize how expensive this COVID crisis has become on the industry at large, the world in total, but also the Asian market. A 10% drop by 2050. And on my personal subject, I love to give you this one, which says that even if all negative climate predictions were true, the cost from global warming in the worst fossil fuel driven scenario would be 5.7% of GDP drop. So it's just amazing that basically even, I mean, everybody talks about the climate, but this is, by the way, from one of the gentlemen, Nortos, who got the economics Nobel Prize for his analysis, saying that even in the worst predictions, the GDP drop is 5.7% because of climate change compared to 10% because of COVID. So just to put things into perspective, this is a serious crisis, much, much worse than what anything else we can see. And putting it in perspective, we have very, very big issues to deal with. All right, I'm almost done. There's one more important slide, and I apologize for being a bit full. But a recent study by Boston Consulting Group, my former company, and the IEF in Saudi Arabia found that this is oil and gas, that the investments in oil and gas have been dropping. In fact, they're expected to drop 20% from 2020 to 21. And these investments need to rise by $250 billion in the next few years to starve off a crisis, to literally avoid a crisis in fossil fuels. This is oil and gas. Now imagine we do it as coal. It's basically the same. There's a significant risk to the global world of energy if what's currently happening continues. The industry needs investment. This is not only coal, but see what happens in oil and gas. I can tell you right now, the next 5 years will be crucial to ensure energy stability and energy security for the world. And the crisis that the oil and gas industry goes into is probably only a fraction of what the coal goes into in terms of supply, in terms of energy supply. And I'm saying this to encourage people and miners to put your money in, because there'll be bright times of pricing coming, because supply is limited, will remain limited, and that means that prices will not go down to last year's level again, at least unlikely. Who knows? I know predictions. So investments will have to rise 25% in the next 3 years to stave off a crisis. I mean, an interesting study. If you read it, have a chance, or you can contact me if you want a copy. Anyways, that was my introduction. Hendra, hope to have a good discussion with everyone else, more specifically on some of the markets, but I think this put things into perspective.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Lars Chernikau, for a very interesting, very informative outlook that you have presented to all the audience. Very comprehensive one. You covered various data, and I would like to a little bit based on the last slide that you mentioned about the potential, the risk of peak of investment in oil and gas. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Indonesian government, not Indonesian government, one of the mining experts in Indonesia, that he gave the assessment that Indonesian oil and gas reserve is only lasting for less than 10 years. Yeah. So yeah, Indonesia used to be one of the world net exporter. Now we are becoming net importer. Okay, thank you, Lars. I will get back to you later in the Q&A. I believe the audience will have a lot of questions addressed to you. It's very interesting one. Okay, thank you, Dr. Lars. Okay, now the next speakers in order of the panelists. First, we are going to listen more further presentations on the data from Vietnam. As Dr. Lars said, Vietnam is one of the most promising potential coal market in Southeast Asia. Indonesian Coal Mining Associations, last year itself, we had 2 webinars with Indonesian ambassador to Vietnam. Yeah, he invited a few Vietnamese coal buyers to discuss the potential trading partner between Indonesia and Vietnam. So we're lucky to have Ms. Tu Fu, yeah, energy finance analyst at the Institute for Economy and Financial Analysis, or IEVA, who is joining us from Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh? Hanoi,
Hi everyone. Yeah, hi again. Yes, I'm joining from Hanoi. May I share my screen now?
Sure, yeah, please.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see you.
All right.
Slide. Yes.
Yes. So I'm just gonna get started. I only have 10 minutes. Gonna go very brief. Yeah, a quick introduction about Aifa. We are a US-based think tank working on doing research on energy markets and policy trends, covering across the globe. But my friends, colleagues, and I today, we cover the Asian market. Our mission is to accelerate the transition towards an economically and environmentally sustainable energy economy. My colleagues and I, we are funded by global philanthropic organizations and individuals, and we do not have business clients. All of our research are public resources, which you can access on our website, as well as knowledge sharing platforms such as this one. Okay, so now the main part of my presentation, what is the coal demand outlook for the year 2021? This is the focus of this year only, because I've talked in my previous webinar about a longer term outlook. For this one, I'm focusing on this year. This is the latest data that I have from the government, which estimated that in 2020, coal demand for Vietnam sat at 92 million tons. And this included all types of coal, thermal and coking, etc. And the projection is that in 2021, there will be a 6.3% growth, rising to 98 million tons. As usual, the power sector remains the largest consumer of coal in Vietnam, accounting to about 60% of total demand. And it is expected that with a mild a mild increase in the coal generation output and the new capacity that comes online this year, there will be an additional 3.7 million tons of coal in 2021. At the same time, the steel and cement sector is expected to grow this year, as it benefits from a recovery in construction activities in Vietnam, as well as more demand in export markets such as China. Vietnam, as Lars previously said, the GDP growth in 2020 was 2.9%. And assuming all goes to plan, we are targeting a rebound of 6% GDP growth this year. And the government is planning to manage the recovery by boosting public spending in infrastructure projects, as well as more real estate projects being actually developed this year. At the same time, in terms of domestic supply, the coal output commercial this year is estimated at 45 million tons, an annual output that is expected to remain throughout till 2025. And I also want to note here that Vinacomin recently announced that it is now sitting on an inventory of 15 million tons, very high because of a lot of import taking place last year. Now, with the power sector being the predominant consumer, how is the energy transition that is happening right now going to impact coal power output this year? I have here the data from the latest data on Vietnam power system capacity mix. As you can see, last year, the total system capacity increased by 25% to 69 gigawatt. And this is the domestic capacity. We have some imported capacity from Laos and China, but I didn't include it here. As you can see, the biggest jump took place in the renewable energy category, particularly rooftop solar installations, which was enabled by a policy by the government to incentivize such development. And for 2021, we expect that at least 3 gigawatt more of renewable energy will come online, and that will come from wind power projects that are already under construction right now and probably will be connected to the grid in later this year. But in case in the next few months, the government issues a continuity of the feed-in tariff policy for solar rooftop, we expect that the actual the figures for renewable energy can actually be higher than the what we forecast here. Meanwhile, as you due to the rapid penetration of renewable energy, the share of coal power fleet in the total system has dropped from 37% in 2019 to 33% in 2021. Here. However, coal power plants continue to generate the most electricity for the system at around 50% last year, 2020, even though we expect this to fall to 48% in 2021. The output of total power output is expected to grow this year to 6.2%. And in terms of the mix, where does it come from? Coal power will still increase by 2.7% because it will continue to be used as base load. And in order to manage the rising output from renewable energy projects, so far, I understand that the Ministry of Industry and Trade and EVN will manage such intermittency by cutting down import of electricity from China, cutting down all the production of oil run facilities, and possibly they can adjust the output from gas-fired plants thanks to the
Hello.
Towards the end, the total for the power sector is expected at 59 million tons. And next, in terms of import, how has been the performance in 2020? I have here the latest data from the Vietnamese government side, which includes import data for all sorts of coal. So that might explain some between my data here and the data mentioned by Dr. Lars. As you can see, total coal imports in 2020 was 55 million tons, or 25% increase compared to 2009. And we import from some key sources: Australia, Indonesia, Russia, China, and a few others. But imports from Australia has been growing very rapidly in the past few years, and it jumped 30% compared to 2009. And meanwhile, Indonesia, the growth rate was 10%, so comparably slower. And now Australia remains the biggest seller, having 37% market share, widening the gap with Indonesia. And again, Vinacomin said that it imported nearly 10 million tons of coal last year, and the target is to reduce this to just 1.4 million tons in 2021. So to wrap up, just a few bullet points here. Vietnam's coal demand continues its growth trajectory. The government expects it to reach 98 million tons in 2021. An additional demand comes from the new coal power plants and more intensive steel and cement production. Whether the import demand will be higher than last year or lower, this will be influenced by Vinacomin's high inventory level as of right now, as well as it plans to cut on import. In terms of the markets that we buy from, Australian exporters, it's likely to remain competitive sellers on a cost basis. And in the medium term, Vietnam's pivot away from coal power, as well as the transition towards renewable energy that it's already taking place right now, I think it's going to threaten the pipeline coal power projects that are now under planning, so under negotiation and a plan for commissioning after 2025. For now, for 2021, the output from the existing coal fleet is likely to be sustained as we use coal as base power, and the transition toward gas systems or even more renewable projects will impact projects to be commissioned in the next 5 years. So that's it from my end.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Tufu from IEVA for the presentation. It was very informative and gave us perspective on how the Vietnam will policing the increased demand of the coal-fired power plant. At the same time, is moving toward the energy transitions. And on your presentation, you said that the potential demand, the increased demand based on trajectory is looks positive, but the energy transitions will threaten the coal power plant project within the pipeline. And interestingly, Indonesian share remains roughly 10%, is fall below the Australian export, excellent export to Vietnam. And according to our data, last in 2018, Indonesians export to Vietnam around 12 million, and in the 2019 it's increased a little bit to 16 million, but we haven't got the data for the 2020. Okay, so thank you very much for the presentations from IEVA. Now we're still talking about the potential market in Vietnam. And Vietnam, of course, economically, they perform very well. One of the biggest, the best performers in the economy in Asia in tackling the pandemic, and now the economic is positive, so we expect also the industry will grow fast, and then the consumption of coal will increase indeed. Okay, the next presenter is our good friend, Mr. Tao De Ngo. He's a Group Executive Chairman of the first Indochina Group. He's based in Ho Chi Minh City. Hello, Mr. Tao.
Yes, thank you.
How are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's clear. Yeah.
All right. I will start sharing one slide. Can you hear me still?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm having a bit. Thanks so much, because I'm having a slightly problem with the internet in our office here. But anyway, thank you so much for letting me joining this webinar this time again. And since last web seminar, we can see, thanks to the presentation of the last presenter from Vietnam, we know that Vietnam has a great potential to grow. But as first Indochina Group, we are facilitating the path of export from Indonesia to Vietnam to increase the the share of the importing coal, because I've been working with a few coal miners from Indonesia, and many of the exporters are facing the differences of how the business conducts in Vietnam, and also the LC, a lot of trading issues that I'm trying to eliminate and increase. But talking about the potential of coal into Vietnam, it has a great potential to grow because we're just facing a lot of new, they call it renewable energy, being solar and offshore wind in Vietnam. But the offshore wind project in Vietnam has not taken up. So it's still in the very beginning of it. But the solar has been through a very rush and overheated projects invested into Vietnam, and it created a oversupply and of electricity. And many of the project owners has been cut to provide only 60% or even 40% of the projected power output. So facing a lot of delays, and everyone rushed into the end of last year, 31st of December 2020, to be included in the fifth tariff, the PDP 7 of the government, and the PDP 7 extended under execution. PDP 8 is under preparation. So a lot of what should I say, challenges for the renewable energy sector. So remaining is the coal thermal power plant are still under development quite strongly. And for that, I think we are looking from the Indonesian coal miners. We have to work better to increase the share of coal import from Indonesia to Vietnam. So I want to share that with you, and if any help, we can continue to discuss after this webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tao from Indochina, first Indochina group, joining us from Ho Chi Minh City. From your perspective, perspective of the trader, coal trader in yes. Vietnam, and right. You expect the share of Indonesian coal to Vietnam likely to increase. So this is something that Indonesian miner expect to Indonesia. So okay, we will discuss Absolutely. It later in the Q&A.
Right.
Now, okay. Next, after we listen presentation on the outlook of the coal demand and the future of demand in Vietnam. Now we moving to the other focus country of our today webinar. Next is outlook on the Philippines, one of the biggest Indonesian coal export destination in Southeast Asian region. So the presenter is Mr. Jife. He's presenting for Mr. Sam Reynolds. Mr. Jife, our good friend, is from energy. He's the energy and finance analyst at the Institute for Energy and Economic Analysis, or IEPA. So, Mr. Jife, the time is yours.
Great, thank you, Mahendra. Let me just share screen. Let me just share screen right now, and then we can try to finish this in 10 minutes. We are ready to go. Yep. Okay, great. So, so this presentation is prepared by Sam, our new Philippines specialist. Unfortunately, he's stuck in the US because of the virus, but when things open up, he hopes to be in the Philippines as soon as possible. So without much ado, I'll just move on to the presentation. So we're talking about the Indonesian coal supply outlook to the Philippines. What is Aifa? I think my colleague has spoken about it. We are a non-profit. We work with publicly available information. So we are not going to give you the actual numbers and exact numbers. We take what's available in the public space, and then we combine with other policy announcements to analyze the road ahead, right? And the good news is the Philippines, because it's in ASEAN, just like Indonesia and Vietnam, is very interesting, and we'll find out in the presentation. So what's the summary for the Philippines? Well, things held up in 2020. The Philippines outperformed China as a market for Indonesia. There's a shipping sample done by Banchero Costa, and the Philippines shipments from Indonesia went up 100%. Wow, that's great. Philippines has an installed coal capacity of 10.4 gigawatts, so that's all confirmed. And this is about 25 million tons. They imported Indonesian coal 25 million tons in 2019 as well. And possibly around that number for last year as well, which is actually very impressive, given that India is down 20% and China is down about 15%. But because of Australia argument now, it's up again. So that's also another thing going on that's interesting as well. So what Philippines have done is that they're committed to increase their capacity by 3.5 gigawatts. So that's committed, and that's going to get you maybe 9 million tons of coal demand. So that's the good news for the coal companies. The bad news, they are pivoting away from coal. They have announced a moratorium which could threaten 8 gigawatts of indicative coal projects, which is about 19.4 million tons. But as Sam will explain later on, this is open to debate. So it's not confirmed. There's a lot of explanations, a lot of things going on, because Philippines is a very interesting place and it's all good. So, okay, let's talk about what Philippines did last year. So this is the information from Banchero Costa. You can see everybody's down except the Philippines, and the Philippines is up a lot. And this is also fairly consistent with what everybody else is getting. So these are the actual numbers for last year, and this is only a sample. But according to Argus Media, which uses the customs data, for January to October, we're down 14. This sample here, we're down 16. Well, the good news is India started picking up again in the third quarter. It came out of lockdown. They're going to keep going, fair enough. And that was on the call as well on Wednesday with India. And then for China, because of the whole Australia and imbroglio, they are buying Indonesian coal. So Indonesia is a beneficiary of what's going on between Australia and China right now. So Chinese numbers have obviously picked up starting in December as well. Okay, exports to the Philippines. Yeah, in Philippines, big outperformer. So they more or less did 25 million tons, which is amazing, considering that India was down 20 odd and China was down 15%. So Philippines, very important now for Indonesia. And that's why we're going to spend a bit of time talking about the new capacity, and we're going to list out the projects, etc. Okay. So who are the Indonesian companies that benefited? Well, congratulations, Bayan, well done. In the Philippines is a big market for Indonesia because the listed companies disclosed that they sold 15 million tons in 2019, which is 60% of total Indonesian exports. So the big companies are big players into the Philippines, and really, because of what the Philippines did last year, really helped those companies in terms of the financial performance. So it was a win-win for both sides. So we looked at how Philippines compared with the other two markets, and you can see that for the first half of 20, and this is all public information, China wasn't that big, but India really fell off a cliff, and the Philippines was very stable. So in terms of a business management perspective, Philippines has been a big contributor to Indonesia in the first half of 2020. Okay. Now, the bad news or interesting news. Renewable capacity is going to go up. At least the Filipinos have said the Philippines government has said they want to do that. Okay, so we're going to try to unpack and what it means for Indonesia. So this is the installed capacity by type. Oops, it's out of joint, but anyway. What's interesting is that obviously in 2019, coal did go up and renewables went up a little bit, but that's right now. So right now we've got 25 million tons addressable market for the Philippines, okay? And renewables was 7.4 gigawatts, which is about 70% of coal capacity. Now, this is what's going to happen to renewables going forward. So for committed, Philippines has committed to 800 megawatts or 0.8 gigawatts. And this is the big challenge for everyone, both the renewables and coal. The indicative capacity increase is 24.7 gigawatts. That's a lot, okay? And, hydro's got a lot, but solar, big one, more than half is actually solar. We can try to unpack this as we go along. If this 24 goes ahead, it's going to double the coal capacity. In fact, it's going to be, even if the other coal capacity that could be off continues, it'll be 20 gigawatts and in total, and the renewables could be 32 gigawatts. So if the Philippines execute on their renewable plan, They are renewable, be bigger than coal. Obviously, this is all up in the air right now. We can talk about that afterwards. Moving on from there. So this is the committed capacity. So this is going ahead. Those are the completion dates, 2024, 2021. It's all good. And this is going to give about 9 million tons of coal for Indonesia. Now, the risk to Indonesia in the short term, especially in the first half, is that as two, my colleague has stated, inventories is 15 million tons there. So the Vietnamese are not in a rush to buy Indonesian coal. And also Australian coal that couldn't go to China may find their way into the Philippines, right? So these are the short-term risks for Indonesian sales into the Philippines. But at least we've got another 9 million tons. So of the 25 million tons right now, we've got another 9 million tons coming in the next 3 years. So the pie is there. But in the short term, you've got Vietnam taking the time, and then you've got Australia putting the coal there. So a lot of changes going on, you know. Okay. This is the indicative coal capacity. So I've quoted the report, but I'm going to unpack the report a bit. So there's 7.8 gigawatts there. Now, what Sam has been hearing out of the Philippines is that the coal power companies will go to the government in the Philippines and discuss this. And how are they going to discuss this? They're going to say, hang on a minute, you know, this is an extension of an existing plant. We've got economies of scale, we've borrowed money, etc., etc. So the Philippines government has indicated they want to pivot to renewables, and they put a moratorium out. But according to Sam, this moratorium is being subject to intense discussion by both sides. Okay? So, you know, all of us market watchers, it's our job to monitor the changes there and to see how much of that potential 19 million tons is back on the table, right? Because 19 million tons is a lot of tons. Because if Philippines is buying 25, 19 is, you know, 80% of that. So something for all of us to watch. Obviously, we have to watch the news. And Pahendra, you know, you may have to go on a mission to the Manila as well, but it's all up in the air right now. I mean, it's anybody's guess, right? But they've already come out and they've said that they want to pivot to renewables, but obviously this is all open to discussion at this point in time. So, yeah, the renewables capacity, like I alluded to earlier, so I put the 7.75 in red because that could be wiped off the map. And even with the 21, even with that 8, it only come out about 22 gigawatts. And the Philippines execute on all their renewables is going to come in at 33, which is a lot more than 22, right? So, you know, but we'll see as this plays out over the next, you know, 2 years. We'll see how that plays out. And this is the Philippines target versus the existing renewables capacity. You can see the target is very aggressive, and this will be consistent with the moratorium that they've announced. So this is the message is unified. And moving on, so what is the challenge for Indonesia? Well, with 10.4 gigawatts, there's 25 million tons of annual coal import demand, so that's there. The committed capacity that's going ahead is going to give you 9 million tons. But the moratorium is the big issue here, because the moratorium could wipe out 8 gigawatts, and this represents about 19.5 million tons, okay? And if the Philippines, I repeat, were to execute on all their renewable plans, renewable capacity would be 50% more than coal capacity, even if you include the 8 gigawatts that could be wiped out. So there's a lot of moving parts in the Philippines. Watch the space, because a lot of changes going on there. And it's going to be an interesting time for both Indonesia and the Philippines. And with that, thank you, Pahendra. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. GFAV, Energy Finance Analyst from IEVA, for a very interesting update on the Philippine markets. You said a lot of changes going on, you know, recently and in the next, even next first half of this year, yeah, and something that we Indonesians exporters keen to monitor all the development in the Philippines. And very interesting, you mentioned about the rise of the renewable energy in the Philippines, and if the question is how fast, yeah, how soon the Philippines government execute the RE capacity, yeah. So this is something that will greatly affect the potential 19 million yeah, of the potential additional export from the Philippines, which accomplished about 80% of the last year total coal import. So it's very huge number, and now it's hugely debated in the Philippines. And yeah, the information, we thank you, and we from the association, we have to build the communication as soon as possible with our government's official or embassy in Manila very soon. Thank you, Mr. GV. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have listened the outlook of the Southeast Asian market from Dr. Lars, and listen interesting presentations from our colleagues in Vietnam, and also from GV was covering the Philippine markets. Now we're going to hear the perspective from Indonesian miners, Indonesian miners, and how Indonesian miners deal with the changings of the landscape on the Southeast Asian region market. Listen the potential in Vietnam and the Philippines, and changes due to the Australian and China tensions and so on, and also Indonesian producers experiencing the one of the worst weather rain season in years. So okay, today we're delighted to have Mr. Agustinus Tamrin. Agustinus Tamrin is a senior practitioner who's been in the industry for more than almost 2 decades, probably, I guess. Okay, Pak Agustinus Tamrin, the experience in the South Sumatra area, the region that's very well situated to cover or to fit the demand from Southeast Asian countries. Okay, Pak Agustinus, silakan, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Hendra. Good day, everybody. So I have to answer 2 major questions from Pak Hendra. The first, how we can adapt with the current situation. So you're right that South Sumatra coal is one of the very favorite coal required by some buyers, especially from Southeast Asia. I think Southeast Asia, we have Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia. I think that those, yes, Cambodia as well, but Cambodia is correct. Very high interest to buy coal from South Sumatra, especially Malaysia, and then also Thailand, but mostly we supply to Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines. When we talk about the strength point for Indonesia coal, I think all of us agree that first, Indonesia consists a lot of variety of coal, range from 6,500 to 3,400. I think this kind of specs is required most of the boiler, whether it's domestic or in Asian countries. And for Sumatra, South Sumatra is very popular with the coal with the variety of 5,800 to 3,800. And then some of those is with a little bit high sulfur, but it's still acceptable in Asian countries. It's not like in Korea, it's very restricted for the higher sulfur. But in some countries, they still require one with high sulfur. And then it's like a big supermarket for the Asian to look for the coal in the South Sumatra. The geographic location also, if you see the location, we ship our coal from the transshipment point in Bangka Strait, which is very close to any part, whether it's to Asian countries or East Asia and South Asia. And then we can even supply, not using the mother vessel, but we can supply by barge. To Malaysia is an often frequently basis to Malaysia, and also in some destination to Vietnam and Philippines, we use bigger barges like 300 more feet. With this point of benefits is give a benefit to the buyer, first from the logistic cost, and also the length of time for them to keep the minimum inventory. By the shorter distance, of course, they are not necessary to put more volume for buffer stock. So it's very convenient for them. Consider the geographic location of the coal mine. The third point is that in terms of the sustainability of supply, you see that South Sumatra, I think the whole season, the whole year, we can supply the coal. In some other part in Indonesia, maybe in Kalimantan, Central Kalimantan, still face some problem of the level depth of the river, even on a weekly basis. But for Sumatra, I think we face one maybe in August, July, when it's drought season. Some part in South Sumatra have a low level of the river, but it's maybe only 1 month. But they can still get the material from, not from the Musi River, they can get from Jambi or from Musi Banyuasin area. So these 3 points, I think the strong point that maybe can be used for the consideration of the buyers. Regarding the latest situation of the very high rain, yes, I admit that this is one of the problems. There are two problems actually. First, because of the sudden requirement from the China is very strong, which is then they try to secure after a certain time of absence. And then this not followed by the readiness of the coal mine to produce enough coal because of the long period of difficult situation. You still remember the pandemic situation? They just run in the very low, enough for them to cover the operational costs. But then suddenly it's go up because of the requirement, and then followed by also the weather. You see that the weather is quite difficult. We face the situation of 3 days without coal able to bring out from the site. And then also the situation at the coal site, we cannot do any mining activity as well as the transportation to jetty. Also, when the market is peak, the situation of the barge availability is also less. And then the availability of the floating crane is also one another problem. So a lot of barging, queuing, and then it's create a quite significant demurrage. And then the weather also another reason that we cannot fulfill some of the contracted purchase. So there's nothing much we can do at the moment. As maybe the other thing is that we have to increase the number of equipment. So once the weather is getting better, then more equipment is ready to work. Yeah, I think this is one of the things that we try to anticipate. And also because of the heavy rain in South Sumatra, you know that the specification is with the high HGI, sometimes it's ready to be moisture. So we face a lot of moisture problem also. We face some claim of the TM, and then yeah, we have some effort to counter it by maybe to make it the size bigger, something like that. Yeah, I think there's a few points I may share from the miner's perspective.
Okay, thank you, Pak Agustinus Tamrin, for your information, the update on the from the miner's perspective on the potential Southeast Asian region for Indonesian exporters. And talking about the impact of from the weather, yeah, or flooding in South Kalimantan, I heard that some companies, yeah, few companies, I don't know how many, the exact number, have declared already force majeure, yeah, due to the flooding. Okay, next, the last presenter is Pak Budi Suryadi. He's the manager of power, fossil fuels, alternative energy and storage at the ASEAN Energy Center for Energy. Yeah? So we like to know a little bit about the clean coal technology, and I believe the Southeast Asia countries now is put focus on the development of the clean coal technology. So, okay, Pak Benny Suryadi, please. Waktunya 10 menit juga, Pak.
Terima kasih banyak Pak Hendra. A very good afternoon again, everyone. I'm trying to utilize my 10 minutes effectively. But I start with a short introduction about the institution that I'm representing for. So I'm working for the ASEAN Center for Energy. We are the intergovernmental organization that representing the interests of the 10 countries in the Southeast Asia region. So it's the Brunei, Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, all the countries in this region on the energy cooperation. So meaning to say that we kind of attach to the Ministry of Energy from all of 10 countries in region. So we are more on the policy perspective from the government side. So what I'm going to share is also just to echo what is already mentioned by excellent speaker from previously about the coal market outlook and supply trend in the Southeast Asia region. Much of it is being touched already by Dr Lars in the beginning about its general outlook that we have in this region. And I only have a few slides, and then it's being drawn from our latest study. We call it the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook, which was launched at the minister meeting last November. So this is the official study on the energy outlook in Southeast Asia region, because it's reflecting the actual situation and interest from policies today and in the future from all of the 10 countries in region. So we don't make up our own assumption. So it is reflecting what the policymakers, what the government view in the way they look the energy landscape from today until 2040s. And this is simply echo what Pak Lars mentioned, that we can't run away from the coals. So we conducted our study in a number of scenarios. We have a 4 scenario there. The baseline scenario is basically translating what's the current government thing on their power development plan. So like Vietnam is updating the PDP is being reflected. Philippines is also, the latest one is also being reflected, including the Indonesia, the previous one, not the new one, which is still under development. So it's reflecting everything on that one. So also you see second scenario, the MS stand for the ASEAN member states. So it's official name when you're familiar saying ASEAN countries. Also, whatever the target that they have, it be it a renewable energy, be it an energy efficiency, also an NDC target. So whatever they put on the target, or this is the thing that reflected 100% on what situation that they have. And that's the national level. At regional level, you see the APEC target scenario. We also have kind of the aspirational at regional levels. So for example, like Philippines and Vietnam mentioned before, there is an ambition, there is a target on having renewable energy in their energy mix for the next decades to come. But on regional levels, there is also a number that being agreed by all of the 10 countries in the Southeast Asia region. It's translated as a 23% of renewable energy from the energy mix. From the today's situation is around 12%. So it's a tall order that's going to achieve. 55% of the installed capacity is coming from renewable energy in 2025. And also, last not least, because countries is part of the global commitment, the NDC and the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goal. So we also including this as part of our scenario. But the result, as you see, that the result is various because the situation is changing, and policy is different, it's changing. What is the scenario if you put a normal policy or tightened policy? But again, echoing what Pak Lars mentioned in the beginning, it's coal is You may say coal will be a king, but the coal will continue to playing a significant role in the energy mix in the Southeast Asia region. So whatever the scenario that we have today, or at least what is being translated, unless there is a significant change coming in the next 1 to 2 years, but the coal is become a big part of that one. We see how coal is growing very fast in terms of the when you're seeing the baseline or target scenario. When the country is trying to have more renewable energy, a number of the coal that expanding to be replaced by the renewable energy like solar or wind, or to some context also hydro, but still a huge numbers that's coming to be expected. This the projection is also actually already included some consideration on the COVID-19 situation. We know everybody is having a economic downturn, but then 2021 we expect it to be reborn and achieve it and fulfilling all the demands that. And more specific on the power sectors, I mean, of course, coal will be addressed to many sectors to be supplied, but specifically on the coal, on the power sectors, we will see that how coal is become a main, replacing natural gas as a main supplier for the generating the electricity in region. There is one scenario that where we see that there will be substituted by renewable energy, but of course, is a lot of efforts, incentive, policy need to be put in place in order to achieve it in this situation. And in this again, I mean, addressing all the scenario that we have in the countries today, not only looking one perspective, but including all the perspective, be it on national situation, regional commitment, and also the situation that we have at the global levels. And this will be my last slide is, again, because we are not going to run away from coals, at least not today. I mean, still the major part of the energy system to be coming from the coal in many ASEAN countries. Then the minister of all of 10 countries agreed to collectively enhance their effort to optimize the role of CCT, highlighting the use of the clean coal technology in facilitating the transition toward a sustainable and lower emission development in region. It is many words, many ways that need to be implemented on this one, like continues to promote the role of CCT and also looking the option of the CCUS, and then the outreach to enhance the public awareness on this coal issue, the investment that will be very crucial after we are having and still experiencing the economic challenge with the current situation. So the innovation and partnership is definitely a key to deal in this situation. And last but not least, to advance the research, development, and innovation among the ASEAN countries. So this has become a key directive on regional levels to address the outlook for coal as the major fuel for the ASEAN in the coming decades. I stop there. Again, thank you very much. Back to you, Pak Hendra.
Thank you very much, Pak Benny from ASEAN Center for Energy. Yeah, it's very interesting, informative updating that you have just presented. And I think beside ASEAN Center for Energy, in government level, we have also what we call AFOC, yeah, ASEAN Focus on Coal, yeah, that's a forum, ASEAN Forum on Coal, yeah, that's forum set up by Ministry of Mining across the ASEAN members countries, yeah, and they meet annually to discuss more on the policy issue. But the involvement of the industry player, I think, is a very limited because it is a very exclusive governmental level. Okay, we have listened all the excellent presentation for all the speakers, and Pak Adianto, things I need to ask your permission to extend the time because we have several questions addressed by the participant. Okay, Dr. Lars, yeah, Yeah, before you take some questions from the audience, I'd like to ask Dr. Lars. Are you there, Dr. Lars?
I'm here. Hi, Hendra. How are you?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, you've listened the outlook of the Vietnam coal, yeah, from Vietnam and the Philippines, and it seems that the rise of renewable energy in those countries is increased now. Is potentially will affect the demand of coal. So how do you see this development? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is your
actually, I mean, coming from Germany, I can tell you very clearly what I believe will happen, and I can show you 2 slides. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Because basically, I mean, Germany is kind of ahead of the game a little bit, right? And oops, sorry. No, okay. So Germany's, no, this is the world. I want to have Germany. Okay, Germany. Germany's installed capacity of wind and solar is 54% in the system. Okay, so that's where you see Vietnam and Philippines slowly trying to go to. So fossil fuels is 41% in the system. You can see that 20 years ago, the fossil fuel basically hasn't changed the capacity. What has increased is wind and solar in the system. Now, in terms of actual power production, wind and solar has taken, and now I can't see the number because I see you guys there, is 28% last year. So these 54% give you 28% of power, and they give you, hold on, and they give you 4% of primary energy. So, I mean, you get a sense how bad it is for the environment and for the public funds to do what Germany did and what Vietnam and Philippines are now supposed to do. And that's a discussion, Benny, I would love to have with you on a policy issue. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem because you're doubling capacity. You're talking about capacity. It's completely irrelevant what the capacity is. What's relevant is how you use it. And for the world, by the way, then the numbers are similar, but I'm not gonna share those now. I'm gonna share one other thing, and the reason is very simple. Look here. So this is power in Germany. Okay, this is how the German is. You see demand, supply, and you see 2019 in December, there was here like 65% of solar and wind in the system. A few days later, there was almost 0% of wind and solar in the system. So you need to keep that backup capacity, and your cost will increase. Even though you believe wind and solar is becoming cheaper, it's not becoming cheaper. It's becoming more expensive because the cost of not running your gas and coal plant is becoming so expensive. So the Asia is pushed into these wind and solar, believing they do something good for the climate or for the world, but in fact, all it does is increase cost and increase the risk of blackouts. And oh, by the way, this is Germany just a couple of months ago. 0 wind and solar, right? So I mean, it's just incredible how it works. And when Germany said, you know, they have 97% renewables in the system on the 4th of July 2020, they didn't show you at that time that they had waste power 15 gigawatt at the time because they had too much power. They couldn't turn off all the power. And then a few days later, they had 0% of wind and solar in the system, and that means they had a shortage of power. They had to import the power. Now, Germany is reducing wind, coal, and nuclear to a fact where they will not have enough base capacity anymore. We will have blackouts in Europe. We almost had a blackout a few weeks ago. So, and that's what I hope will not happen in Asia. And I would love to have the discussion, but you see, sorry for the longer answer, but the problem is what is happening now is not good for the environment, is not good for the people, is not good for the finances, and it will happen probably anyways. So, you know, the systems become less stable, erratic, more expensive, everything. The coal capacity cannot drop. It will probably still grow, but the utilization of the capacity will drop because wind and solar will take at times some of that away. So that is a risk factor that the burning of coal will be impacted long-term by the capacity, but otherwise capacity is completely irrelevant. What's relevant is utilization.
Interesting, Dr. Lars. So yeah, okay. Yeah, the coal capacity is yeah, the utilization is the key, yeah, here. And so I think if you look at Indonesia and how Indonesia dealing with the use of coal and the rise of renewable, is it Indonesia is following the, how do you see Indonesian compared to our colleagues in Vietnam and the Philippines?
Yeah, well, another interesting fact is that I just recently, I'm just about to publish something on solar in Europe, and Spain is probably the solar strongest region in Europe. There's so much sun, and Spain, in fact, has more sun than Philippines, Vietnam, or Indonesia. So, and I'm showing in the paper why it doesn't make sense to put solar into Spain. Yeah? So it doesn't make sense to put solar into Indonesia either. You don't have wind, by the way, either. There's no wind. Yeah? So, but yet you will be pushed to do it by the international government, and you're going to waste public money doing that. But it will happen. Geothermal, of course, it's fine. I mean, I've no problem. Hydro is great. All these things are great, but they have limited potential. But wind and solar is a complete waste of resources and money. And it's bad for the environment because you need space. You need to cut trees for that. But Indonesia will do it. Philippines will do it. Vietnam will do it, right? I mean, they are doing it, and we're not going to stop it. And but the base capacity has to remain. That base capacity is no choice around coal. Probably also a lot of gas, but gas is more expensive, and I'll show later why it doesn't make sense either.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lars. We'll get back to you later. Okay, there's a question from the audience. Yeah, this is addressed to Mr. Tao. Yeah, a question from Pak Brian Cristianto. Does the government, Vietnamese government, he is referring to, work together with the private sector in distributing the electricity generated by the solar power in Vietnam? What is the scheme if they do cooperate? So, Dr. Tao, please, you can,
yes.
and then followed by Tu Phu, maybe would like to add something. Right.
For the time being, power generation in Vietnam can be privately owned, but power transmission and power distribution, I mean, electricity is solely by the government.
EVN, yeah.
Yes, monopoly, EVN, Electric Vietnam. So I don't see any time frame for the government of Vietnam to open up for either the transmission or distribution. So I don't know yet. Maybe Tu can give the answer better than me. But the international investors coming to Vietnam put quite a bit of pressure on the government to, so to say, to make it fair and square for all competitors, regardless of international or locally. So, I mean, of course, Vietnam is a member of WTO and have to be client and have to open up the country for international investors as well. And with the new government coming next month, I think the business environment will be improved, and the role of state-owned companies will be less and less because there's a roadmap for to say put all the privatized the state-owned enterprises and IPO them. So that is the change for the public sector or the private sector to be more significant and have a greater impact into the Vietnam economy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tao. Yeah, there is a major political meeting taking place now in Vietnam. Yeah, and so we accept there will be a very positive development on the made by the new government very soon. Okay,
yes, definitely.
Ms. Tu Phu, you have something to add on these questions that?
Yeah, I just want to add. So, in terms of investment in generation assets, there are no limit on ownership by foreign investors. So it's equal opportunity access to investment here in terms of generation assets, solar, wind power plants. And in terms of the government or EVN's effort to improve the transmission grid to reach out to solar plants. I think that has been ongoing and very intensively and well done in the past year. We've heard feedback from investors of solar power projects that curtailment can happen on a short period of time, but in exchange, the grid is improved and will ensure less curtailment in the coming months and years. And a third point is, again, on the transmission. Yes, the government is looking into allowing private investors to help invest in a transmission grid. And the legal regulations on that are being developed and probably will take the next 1 or 2 years to finalize, so that can be a streamlined process, a legal framework for that to happen more in the future.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sufu. So now another question from audience. Yeah, it's Alvin Gustav. Alvin Gustav is direct his question to Mr. Ji Fei, yeah, from IVA. Questions concerning the Philippines market is Mr. Ji Fei mentioned it's one of the promising market in Southeast Asia, but Mr. Alvin Gustav would like to see you elaborate more on the proportion of the Philippine coal consumptions between import and the domestic. How's the proportion?
Sure. Thank you, Pahendra, as always, and thank you, Gustav, for the question. I think the major mine in the Philippines is Semirara, and they supply to their own power plant. But what's interesting as well is that the Philippines does produce coal, around maybe 10 million tons, and it does find its way across to China. And given what's going on with Australia and China right now in terms of the coal trade, in the short term, I would expect that a lot of the Filipino coal orders to China will be maintained. So the door is open for Indonesia to continue to access this market. Yeah. So, but I mean, like I think Dr. Lars has really touched on the real interesting, the big question for us today is that how determined is the Philippines government to cancel the 7.8 gigawatts? Because by going up 3 gigawatts, they have another 9 million tons for Indonesia, which is fair enough. Indonesia has to compete on price with Australia, etc. But the real question is, when you run a power grid system, do you want more coal, or are you happy with the 3.5 gigawatts? And this question, according to Sam, is open for discussion right now, even though they've indicated that they want to go to renewables capacity. But I think the dialogue is ongoing. And we are Aifa, we're always interested in dialogue, and we're interested in win-win outcomes all the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jifei. Pak Benny, you've heard and observed the discussions regarding the potential moratorium in the Philippines, and also the Vietnam government is a pivot away of coal, and Dr. Lars has mentioned about the economical of renewable energy versus coal utilization. Yeah. So, Pak Benny, as a ASEAN representative from ASEAN Center for Energy, how do you see this from your organization's perspective on this development of the issue?
Thank you, Pak Hendra. So we see the current situation is like a junction or critical point. I mean, to be, as Lars mentioned, there is, for many years, we are heavy reliance on the coal, and then most of the power development plan of the countries, the official one, is still look at coal as a major supplier to that one. But then we are currently living in this situation with, okay, the renewable energy seems to be coming very fast in several places in the world, and then there's also a lot of discussion or pressure on or changing in the financial perspective or from the geopolitical perspective on this kind of issue. So the government is trying to see it in the more moderate way to respond, because it's not something that AK can see it quickly. Okay, let's move to this directive because everybody's talking on that one. It's a heavy reliance that we have so far, and then it's being part of the plan. So We are the ASEAN Center for Energy that, as you mentioned, that we have ASEAN Forum on Coal. It's basically the representative of the policy makers in all of the Ministry of Energy or Environmental in all of the ASEAN countries. It's supposed to be also including all the private sector, but it's we're not able to reach it to the private sector yet. But this is kind of the discussion that we have. We are looking all of kind of options. So we see a development in the Philippines. So it's initiative that we also welcome, but we also support it. How if this is to be taken, then how to implement it in the right way in the process that is still supplying the energy, supporting the economic development, especially in the current situation where COVID pandemic impact is really disturbing the plan and really affecting the plan that everybody's have. Like I mentioned earlier, that before we look on the renewable energy, as ASEAN is looking at another 100 gigawatt coming from renewable energy, and it's coming from the solar and wind. Lars maybe doesn't like, but that's the plan that the country is looking at this point. But that's being planned when a year ago. It's being decided, and then but what happens now, and then something that the policymakers is also trying to carefully think that's going to be, and then is all the input from everybody is welcome. The one. So we in ACE trying to look at various scenario, compiling the information, engaging with all of the peoples to get the proper input, so that the government in ASEAN countries can have a correct, maybe it's not the best one, but a proper policy for their countries. I stop there, Pak. Thank you, Pak Hendra.
Thank you, Pak Benny. Okay, now I'll take questions from audience. This from Pak Maisam Hasnain, yeah. Pak Maisam Hasnain is from Moody's, yeah, Investor Relation in Singapore. He's based in Singapore. The question is to Ms. Tu Phu, yeah, regarding Vietnam. Despite Vinacom's large coal reserve, what are the key drivers for the country continuing to rely on such large imports? And is there a risk imports could decline quite quickly if domestic coal miners can ramp up volumes? This is for Ms. Tu Phu.
I think there is the problem now is with the domestic reserves, which is slightly flattening out, and higher cost of production. So they can get cheaper source of imports, then there will be, take advantage of that.
So it's getting more expensive, yeah, for domestic coal supply in Vietnam, yeah. So it's a cheaper sourcing from the import, yeah. Okay, Pak Agustinus Tamrin, yeah, Pak Agustinus Tamrin.
Yes, Pak.
In the presentation from Ms. Tu Phu, the proportion of Indonesian coal, the share Indonesian coal in Vietnam is only 10%, while Australia is 30%. I believe Russia is bigger than Indonesian shares. This is something that we are wondering how come Indonesians has not yet taken, a maximum benefit of the close proximity between, especially South Sumatra to Vietnam, and also the having Indonesian as the same members with Vietnam in ASEAN.
Okay, Pak Hendra. I think I need to show you the 2 pages that I prepared actually. Could Pak Adianto, could you please show the 2 pages that actually I prepared for this question? So in short, Ms. Tu Phu, actually, you know that the quantity of the availability of supply in Sub-Sumatra coal mine is still not as big as Kalimantan, although the resource in Sub-Sumatra is about 40% of the total national reserve. But the problem is the logistic. So at the moment, like us, we have, in the past, the company possesses about 100 million tons of coal, but it can only be shipped out around 1 million, 1.5 maximum per year. So in this case, the service is done on who come first come, first serve. Who come first, and asking for cargo, then we offer. So like I think last week there is a desperate buyers, I think from Thailand, asking and begging me to provide a cargo for him because he got nothing from anywhere else. So in this case, the lesson to learn is that you know that we have to anticipate this kind of situation. This is a repetition situation actually every year, especially for the Q1, which is the heavy rain in all area in Indonesia, Q4 to Q1. And then in this situation, one should not be do some, I mean, have to make a very proper plan to anticipate the situation and not to speculate on the spot basis. I think all the factory, where the factory or the power plant have to anticipate this situation. So it should not be like, okay, now it's a headache market, then we just try to find cargo. If they have a proper plan, of course, the situation should not be happen like this. So for us, actually, Pak Adianto can show the presentation that I prepared. But if not, maybe I can say that actually half of our cargo, export cargo in 2020 is come to Southeast Asia. And then 1/3 is goes to South Asia, and then the rest is sent to China. So I may say that Asian countries occupied the priority from our, especially the coal mine that we are in charge with. I think this is the explanation, Pak Hendra.
All right, thank you, Pak Agustinus Tamrin. Now to Pak Dr. Lars, yeah. The question from Yen Johan, yeah, from the audience in the column chat. Dr. Lars, when Dr. Lars mentioned the optimism of coal-based power generation for the next decade, why lately the finance institution or local banks don't have appetite to finance the coal mining activity or coal-based power plant?
Well, it's the reason why they don't want to finance anymore. It's driven by the current, ESG, trying to be good for the environment, but they're not thinking the next step. The fact is, the world of fossil energy is running into a financial shortage, a money shortage, which actually is an opportunity for private investors, by the way. But this money shortage will most likely, or actually reasonably likely, lead to an energy crisis, which I mentioned you saw in oil and gas, will also happen in coal. Now, just think about China this winter, right? What happened in China? Do you believe any wind or any solar could have saved China in those weeks? China knows there's no way wind and solar can do anything during those crisis times. So they need nuclear, which they're investing in. They need coal, which they're investing in. And they also need gas, but gas, not as much, doesn't make much sense for them. So right now, the Chinese investors' banks are probably going to gain because the Western institutions going out of it. Chinese realize this is the opportunity, and basically the world of energy is becoming much more China focused. So China will become much more stronger in terms of a global macroeconomic view, which is an issue for various governments, which people have not really thought about. Governments have not thought about this properly.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lars. Jifei, yeah, you listens this Dr. Lars mentioned about the economical of the renewable energy versus fossil fuel. So in the debates in the Philippine perspective, how do you see you've been monitoring, of course, the market, yeah, and the policy in Philippines. How does the local politician view this economical versus the pressures, global pressures?
Sure, no problem, Andrew. Always happy. My specialty is more China, but let me talk a little bit about the Philippines, and I want to engage in a quick dialogue with Dr. Lars. So with the Philippines, I think the good news for the coal side is that the government is open to interpretations of the moratorium, right? So it's not a hard moratorium, I think there is scope for discussion. So obviously a discussion to do with the base load, a discussion to do with existing extensions of existing plants. I think the government is open to that, right? So Sam will be working with all parties there to continue that dialogue. And, obviously, people like yourself, Mahendra, and Dr. Lars can be very welcome to join that dialogue as well. And then hopefully they can achieve a win-win scenario for everyone concerned, right? And just quickly, Dr. Lars, on the Chinese coal shortage situation, which you touched on. And actually, I was very privileged to be on last Friday to listen to Meng talk about this as well. And for those of you who are not on the call, there were a couple of issues with the Chinese coal shortage. I think one which kind of people forget was that the Chinese tried to fix the price between about 550 to about 650 coal RMB a ton. And as anybody will tell you, that when you try to fix the price of a commodity, supplier behavior will change because people will say, hang on a minute, 650, what's my upside, right? So that contributed to that as well. And then Meng, she touched on that as well. There was an investigation on corruption for local coal mines in Inner Mongolia, which affected the supply side. So maybe the big lessons, and I think Dr. Lars has touched on this as well, is that when you mess around with the financing, you're going to get unintended consequences, right? So when you mess with the financial side, you get unintended consequences. So in the case of the Chinese coal situation, when you try to fix a price range, you will have unintended consequences, and we got some of it now, right? So, it's a good thing the Chinese economy is great, and that's why we have energy demand. But I think the lesson for us is that when you do financial things, or you try to limit financial markets, there's other consequences down the road. Thank you, Mahendra. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jipe. Dr. Lars, would like to add what Jipe has said about the base load issue?
What you said is absolutely correct, Jipe. And I just want to point out the key point. These issues of shortage happen in difficult times, winter, bad weather conditions, right? A monsoon, whatever, rain. And at that time, you need to have a stable supply, which wind and solar can never, ever give you. And that is something what people forget, because the problem is not the average, it's not the capacity, it's not, over the year, oh, great. The problem is on that day, in that week, where do you get your power from? And when the capacity is not there, you will have to turn off factories and have to turn off lights at home. And that's what's happening in Europe soon. It actually happened almost 2 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lars. Tu Fu, yeah, you said that the tension of global trade tension between Australia and Sino is maybe affected Indonesian exporter, yeah, because of some of cargoes from the Australia will divert it to either Philippines or Vietnam, yeah. So Tu Fu and Mr. Tao, can you updating us on how much how the average Australian coal goes to Vietnam temporarily to avoid the Chinese not to divert the cargo to other countries because of the ban.
Guy, I think Guy is he can continue on that story.
Sure, okay. No, yeah. So I think the good news with Vietnam is their plants are quite new. So obviously they can accept the Australian coal, and Vietnam has the port capacity to absorb the cargoes. I guess the real issue is one of pricing, and maybe Mr. Tao may be able to provide more color on the ground. Hopefully Vietnam gets a good deal. Nothing wrong with Vietnam getting a good deal. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Tao.
Yeah, always willing in dealing, and made the best price win always. But there were some difficulties or differences and issues in the trading, more in terms of trading issues more than good price, because savings from the transportation from Australia to Vietnam and the close proximity to Vietnam, that is already a good help to give better price. But I think because the differences in how business conduct are the main issues. So I've been trying to accommodate both sides, how Vietnamese buyers want to do, especially the Vinacomin, who is the state-owned. They do have own wills and ways to do business. And we have to accommodate. And there are also some other economic, what should I say, generosity in terms of buying and selling. And that's built into a business of what do I get, what do you give me, and all of that opens a great insecurity of payment. So we need to work out a way to accommodate both sides. So there will be easier and more transparent ways of doing business together, and that's where I think I can help to make it better.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you. We still have 5 minutes for the closing statement for its participant. But before I go that, Pak Budi, Pak Beni, sorry, Pak Beni, very quick, yeah. Indonesian government is pushing for coal downstreaming, yeah. So how ASEAN for Energy Center see the development of coal downstreaming in the region?
Thank you, Pak. Yes, we are in the discussion with the ministry on this issue. I mean, it's going to be Indonesia is leading on the efforts, and then through the forum that I mentioned earlier, the ASEAN Forum on Coal, that the discussion is also ongoing. Exchange, sharing information among the policymakers, and then we are expecting to work on some concrete program among the countries in the region led by the SDM, and hopefully we can also invite the public participation very soon this year.
Okay, thank you, Pak Beni. Okay, Dr. Lars, please give us your closing statement, please, and then followed by Ms. Tufu and Mr. Tao and Jive, Pak Agustinus, and the last one, Pak Beni. Dr. Lars, please.
Okay, well, the session of the Southeast Asia. So I think, first of all, we saw that Southeast Asia is one of the bright spots, despite all the discussions worldwide about coal. Southeast Asia is one of the bright spots in the market, number one. Number two, the current push into renewables is a threat. It's not a fundamental threat at all for me. For me, it's actually an opportunity, because supply is at risk of drying out or reducing. Actually, producers, investors in fossil fuels, not only coal, also in other fuels, I think have a bright future ahead. That's my personal opinion, with logical conclusion from what I see in the market. I think the Indonesian coal industry, the coal industry as a whole, actually needs to start being more active. And that's probably the one call for action I would like to put here in terms of policy, because this is not about, actually it is very much about environment, because what's happening currently, the discussion is so one-sided and so skewed, but it's funded and financed by strong, large amounts of billions, trillions of dollars. And I think the coal industry has to start take action, take responsibility, but also take action and start discussing with the policymakers in the various countries about what the issues are, and discuss them openly. That's my call for action for the industry. But generally, I see a bright future ahead. This year, I see reasonably healthy price levels, not as bad as last year anymore. And please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lars. So I'll email you later on about our plan that we talked about previously, a couple of years ago, about having a discussions with our members talking about energy transition. Yeah? So hopefully we can get in touch very soon. Thank you, Dr. Lars, for the very interesting closing statement. You mentioned about threat and as well as opportunity for the call. Yeah. Okay, Ms. Tufu. Yeah.
Just want to close up with so it's Vietnam power sector. It's definitely undergoing an energy transition, a transition process, and interest from renewable energy players, from the gas players will threaten the coal players. And we so far fortunately have the support from a lot of multilaterals, think tanks and NGOs, even especially from the German government, where Mr. Lars is from, to help us integrate more renewable energy into the system, both capacity and utilization. So we're happy to keep you updated on how the policy is evolving in the next 1, 2, 3 years. It's going to be a critical period for the policymakers here and also for investors. And as coal suppliers,
We lost her. Yeah.
Yeah, we lost Mr. Fu. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fu. And now, Mr. Sao. Mr. Sao? Mr. Tao, you still there?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
please. Yeah.
I think we have problem with the internet connectivity in Vietnam because we lost the submarine international cable. So international bandwidth in Vietnam are quite limited for the time being, and it takes another month to fix it.
I see. So yeah, thank you for sharing with us in this very lively discussion. Okay, Pak Agus, Mr. GP, please, you have something to.
Great, thank you, Pak Hendra. Always a pleasure to participate. And just quickly on the Philippines, my colleague Sam has done a lot of groundwork there. So the report is all his work. So the bottom line is that there's a base demand for 25 million tons of coal demand there, 2019, likely 2020. They will add 3.5 gigawatts. That could get you another 9 million tons. And then the real big question, which everybody will have a say in, is that 8 gigawatts could be under threat of the planned expansion. So 3.5 is confirmed, 8 is planned, and that's 19 million tons, which is actually a very big opportunity for coal exporters like Indonesia. But that will be subject to a lot of discussion and is ongoing right now. So while the moratorium has been announced, discussions are ongoing. And we at Aifa, we always look at the financial implications, and we always wish the win-win for everybody concerned. Thank you, Pak Hendra. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jive. Pak Agustinus Tamrin, silakan. Ada yang
Pak Hendra, I'm very grateful to speak today with all the panelists, other panelists also from Asian countries. I think for the minor point of view, I think we are always welcome to any inquiries, any demand, and maybe we can talk for longer term or with a certain formula basis, something like that. I think the cargo is not much, but it's a favorable situation, a favorable location also for Asian countries to get the cargo from South Sumatra. Contact me anytime.
All right, great, Pak Agustinus Tamrin. And last but not least, Pak Beni Suryadi from ASEAN Center for Energy.
Thank you again, Pak Hendra. So, speaking from the ASEAN perspective, again, we are 10 countries with the various level of economic development, resource. So the way we see is it should never about oil, renewable energy versus coal, or gas versus renewable, or gas versus coal, but it's every fuel have a place to respond to the needs to the situation. So in that context, we are looking for more collaboration in innovative way to address the energy situation that we have. So, and this is part of that. We are very happy to be part of this discussion and look forward a collaboration in the future. Once again, thank you very much, Pak Hendra.
Thank you, Pak Beni. Thank you all the participants, Dr. Lars Schernikau from MS Bergbau for your very exciting, as always, presentation and outlook and update. Thank you for sharing us very useful information for us here. You sharing your knowledge and your information about the coal Southeast Asia market, where you observing from Europe, the center of the hotly debated issue, energy transition. You're following up day to day, and also your article is very enlightening us. And we hope to have you, in the discussion on the energy transition very soon, Dr. Lars. So thank you very much for joining our today discussions. And Mr. Fu, as always, your update on the coal outlook in Vietnam is very, very informative. And Mr. Sao also from the perspective on the miners, coal buyers in Vietnam. Thank you, Pak Agustinus, Mr. Jive from IVA. As always, IVA providing us a very informative data and updating development issue on the energy transition in Southeast Asian country and other regions in Asia. And Pak Beni Suryadi. Thank you very much for very fascinating discussions, and I'll get back to Pak Adianto as a host.
Thank you, Pak Hendra. Thank you, Pak Hendra. Unfortunately, we have to come to the end of ASEAN Market Outlook webinar. And thank you for insight discussion. and we hope to meet you again in our next webinar. Thank you, Pak Lars. Thank you, Ms. Tupu. Thank you, Pak Tau. Thank you, Pak GP. Thank you, Pak Agustinus Tamrin.
Makasih, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Beni Suryadi, and thank you, Pak Hendra Sinadia. And on behalf of Coal Asia and Petromindo.com, we would also like to thank you and sincere appreciation to Tribakti Laboratory and Integrated Services and Geoservice, Reswara Group, Mahendra, PT Indo Tambang Raya Mega. And also thank you to all participants today. Thank you everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you in the next webinar.
Okay, thank you,
Terima
Pak. Have
kasih,
a nice
Pak,
weekend
semuanya.
to all of you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Bye.
Oke, Pak Dianto, makasih. Pamit.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Thank you.
Pak
Saya
Tau,
Pak Hendra,
terima
Pak
kasih.
Dianto.
Siap,
Oke, Pak Agustinus.
Hendra.
Ya,
Happy weekend. Ya.
gitu Pak.
All right.
Siap.